Venezuela's deep economic recession has spiraled into a humanitarian crisis. Venezuelans are suffering through severe food and medical shortages while crime skyrockets and massive protests call for President Nicolas Maduro to resign. Mendoza has spent the past month in New York with her daughter and realizes she lost a sense of what normalcy means. In Venezuela, she lived without toilet paper for a month in July, using paper napkins instead. Just half a block away from her daughter's Brooklyn apartment, a new Whole Foods WFM recently opened and Anabella told her mom check it out. Mendoza fought back tears when she saw fully stocked food shelves and lush vegetables and fruits, a rare sight in Venezuela today. My eyes got wet, Mendoza says, becoming emotional recounting the Whole Foods visit. In Venezuela, you are so happy when you find something as basic as milk. She isn't alone. About 500,000 Venezuelans visited the United States last year. Increasingly, Venezuelans living in the U.S. say their friends and family who can afford it are coming to America to buy basics. It's just a testament to how badly the country is being managed, says Beatriz Ramos, a Venezuelan tech entrepreneur, who lives in New York. Ramos has hosted 6 friends from Venezuela this year. It's been steadily getting worse and worse and worse. Ramos, Mendoza and others believe life in Venezuela won't be this bad forever, but they aren't optimistic about seeing improvements anytime soon. Still, change could be brewing. Venezuela's National Election Committee recently announced that it would give opposition leaders 3 days in late October to gather enough signatures needed for a presidential referendum vote. The vote to remove Maduro. Maduro's opponents need 20% of registered voters to sign the petition, and then the referendum would happen in early 2017. Some Venezuelans like restaurant owner Ernesto Chong believe life won't get better for at least another 5 years. He brought his wife and their 4 children to the U.S. in September for a reprieve from the shortages. He saved up for 2 years to pay for all of them to visit the United States. Chong and his family flew into Miami and took the 28-hour Amtrak train ride to New York, stopping for a few hours in Orlando to show the kids Disney World. Staying with his brothers in New York City, Chong realized how Venezuela's crisis has affected his kids. Even though the kids are so innocent, they keep asking me every time we go to the supermarket, why aren't aisles of the supermarket in Venezuela like this? Says Chong, a Venezuelan restaurant owner of Chinese descent. He adds, I wish I could take everything home, from food to medicine, says Chong, who lives in the industrial city of San Diego, about a 3-hour drive from the capital, Caracas. Before his trip to the U.S., Chong's 2-year-old son got sick. He went to 7 pharmacies, only to find each one out of penicillin. Eventually a neighbor lent him the medicine. Chong is now stocking up on Tylenol, powdered milk, lentils, soap and several other goods. Chong and Mendoza both say they are middle-class Venezuelans. They are both well-dressed, speak English and tow Tiffany's. Mendoza's late husband was a diplomat in the 1970s and the couple lived in London for 3 years. Chong graduated from Baruch College in New York in 1994 and settled in Venezuela in 2000. But even middle-class life in Venezuela sounds anything but normal with no basic necessities available. And getting to the U.S. has been nightmarish, these Venezuelans say. In addition to no direct flights, no airline flying to the U.S. will accept Venezuela's currency, the bolivar, because it's lost so much value. Travelers must use cash savings or rely on loved ones in the U.S. for help. Mendoza tutors high school students with special needs and earns $150 a month. She used to teach 7 to 8 students daily. Now she only has 3 to 4 students, and some families can't pay her on time. Chong earns $60 a month between a few jobs, managing the family restaurant, working at a bank and helping the local food importer. 5 years ago, when Venezuela's economy wasn't suffering as much, Chong made about $200 a month, a livable income, he says. But the value of their income has been decimated by Venezuela's skyrocketing inflation. This year alone, the IMF forecasts inflation will rise over 700% in Venezuela. The country's government doesn't provide reliable data. No matter how much salaries go up, prices go up faster. Mendoza once dreamed she would be retired by this point in her life. But having had her home robbed twice and savings depleted, she must keep working. Her daughter Anabella helped cover some of the cost of the flight, she says. In her free time, Mendoza often accompanies her 25-year-old son, protesting in the streets against the government and dodging tear gas bombs police fire at her. There isn't any place in Caracas where you feel safe, she says. What will she miss most about New York when she returns to Venezuela this week? I will miss walking in the streets because you can't do it there, Mendoza says. On the sidelines of a peace ceremony in Colombia, President Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela and Secretary of State John Kerry met for the kind of brief exchange that, under normal circumstances, might have been the start of a thaw after years of icy relations. But these are not normal circumstances. Venezuela's economic and political crises have left it more isolated than it has been in years, and not just from the United States. Shortages of food and medicine have left Peru calling for a bloc of countries to pressure Mr. Maduro to accept humanitarian donations, something that he declines to do. Mercosur, the South American trade bloc, has threatened to expel Venezuela over human rights violations and not complying with its trade laws. And even the State Department, after Mr. Kerry's meeting with Mr. Maduro, issued a statement indicating that the men's encounter in Cartagena was not a photo opus but rather Mr. Kerry's chance to express our concern about the economic and political challenges that have affected millions of Venezuelans. The year, marked by economic collapse, has been one of the most unstable for Venezuela, leading to fears among diplomats who now struggle for ways to reach out to a country whose leftist leaders have closed rank. The main concern in the U.S. is the risk of utter collapse and uncontrolled chaos, said Michael Shifter, the president of the Inter-American Dialogue, a policy forum in Washington. And that is why there is this kind of effort to keep this communication going. Venezuela and the United States have not had ambassadors in each other's capitals in several years. Privately, American government officials said they did not know whether more meetings would occur between the two sides and that Mr. Maduro's intentions have long been unpredictable. The Venezuelans canceled that meeting last week, but at the last minute, Mr. Maduro went to Cartagena after all. The spat with Mercosur illustrates how the country's political instability is causing isolation from its neighbors. This month, 4 former allies of Venezuela, Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay and Uruguay, refused to allow Mr. Maduro's government to accept the group's rotating presidency, accusing it of human rights violations, among other transgressions of the group's bylaws. Many of the complaints stem from crackdowns against attempts to hold a recall referendum. Despite wide support for the vote, according to surveys, the government recently said it would delay the referendum in a way that would allow Mr. Maduro to choose his successor should he be removed from office. That development got a rebuke from the State Department, which said it was troubled, citing media restrictions and unexplained delays that it said would deprive Venezuelan citizens the opportunity to shape the course of their country. Venezuela responded with a barrage of criticism against the United States last week during a speech to the United Nations General Assembly, delivered by its foreign minister after Mr. Maduro abruptly cancelled his trip to New York. Other countries are voicing concern about Venezuela's humanitarian crisis, asking Mr. Maduro to simply accept assistance. His month, the new Peruvian president, Pedro Pablo Kuczynski, called for a group of countries including Chile, Argentina and Colombia to begin sending drugs and food. Yet he did not seem hopeful. Now Maduro doesn't want that because he says everything is perfect in Venezuela. But that's not true. Everybody knows that, he said in a recent television interview. And the second thing is there has to be pressure in a nice way, without trying to interfere too much. There has to be some kind of moral persuasion department. A new Whole Foods WFM recently opened and Anabella told her mom check it out. Mendoza fought back tears when she saw fully stocked food shelves and lush vegetables and fruits, a rare sight in Venezuela today. Economic recession has spiraled into a humanitarian crisis. Venezuelans are suffering through severe food and medical shortages while crime skyrockets and massive protests called for President Nicolas Maduro to resign. Mendoza has spent the past "My eyes got wet," Mendoza says, becoming emotional recounting the Whole Foods visit. In Venezuela, you are so happy when you find something as basic as milk. She isn't alone. About 500,000 Venezuelans. Venezuela's Deep East month in New York with her daughter and realizes she lost a sense of what normalcy means. In Venezuela, she lived without toilet paper for a month in July, using paper napkins instead. Just half a block away from her daughter's Brooklyn